Hi there. My name's Sarah Martin and I am the quitting coach. And I'm coming to you from a farm nearby my house with beautiful woods and greenery and streams and also train tracks behind me. So you may hear some of those noises, but really this is today's recommendation of calming the nervous system, of just getting out in nature and grounding and really wanting to share my path for you. Why the quitting coach, right? So I've alluded to many things in my past, but I haven't really told my journey. So what better way than real and raw and sweaty from a run and maybe batting some mosquitoes away to share with you here. So I always like to start this with a practice. So really it is a suggestion today, right, of just getting out in nature, right? Whether you're just walking barefoot in your yard or, certainly if you can get away and go on a hike and put the phone away and, really just be in nature. I went to the most beautiful yoga class yesterday, and there's a lot of reference to trees and of course we did tree pose, right, holding on to one another's hands for support, right, and talking about how trees just naturally support each other through their root system, right? And trees just know how to be, right? Trees aren't out here looking at one another being like, oh, you're fat, you're skinny, what kind of tree are you? Oh, you're a dark tree, you're a light tree. They're just out here being, right? So it's much easier, it can be much easier without distractions and, just being here in the quiet and the stillness in your breath. It can be so much easier to calm the nervous system. So it's really what we're going for most of the time when it comes to quitting and spiritual connection and just being our best selves, right? So when we are calm and we're in our hearts, then we show up in such a beautiful way. And it's funny, I get a lot of that feedback about how I'm showing up. And it's so funny because I'm not always shored up inside, right? But I get a lot of feedback like, oh, you're just a light, or I'm so vulnerable because I'm a watery mess and I'm crying all the time. But a lot of people say it gives other people permission to be themselves, right? And that's why I really want to share my story here. My journey, of course, it's not over, really just beginning, right? And so I just have some people walking by, but again, I'm keeping it real and raw. So I had a friend say to me yesterday, you tell these stories like they're nothing, but you've been through a lot, right? And it's like, I have that meme on my refrigerator, don't ever forget how far you've come, right? Because as we do this work and we start feeling better and we become a yoga teacher or a coach or, we're making strides in the world, we can forget how far we've come, right? Because we're always, we are here to grow and expand. So we are always kind of looking to the next. But it can be really good, especially on those tough days when you don't feel like you're growing and expanding, to really remember you've come a long way, no matter what you're up against, right? You have overcome some amazing things if you're here listening and watching. So I thought I would just kind of share, again, how did I get here? How am I sober for 6 years? And, most recently just gave up pot and cigarettes. As a habit, I will say, cigarettes totally. I don't have a whole lot of, what do I want to say? I'm not against smoking pot or, I know that CBD and some of these things really help people. But for me, if it's a habit, then it's a problem, right? So that's what I really look at as far as my behavior, right? And so that behavior for me started really young. So I've mentioned, I grew up in a verbally abusive alcoholic household with another family member that had a drug addiction, and I was an A student. I was a chubby little kid, so there was a lot of bullying and a lot of that kind of trauma that, with the unworthiness that I work on every single day. And so there was that going on in the house, right? And it was like, we didn't talk about it. A lot of things went on at night. And then the next morning, we were all just supposed to pretend that everything was fine. And that really, to this day, I struggle with my voice, right? I have an overactive throat chakra, right? I worked in human resources and I would advocate for people before having full details. And there was times where I should not have been advocating for that person, right? So this is where we can look at our upbringing and look at some of the traumas that we have and say, okay, how is this acting out? How am I acting this out? Like, is this, when things kind of blow up, it can be really helpful to go back and look at, like, okay, was this part of my upbringing? Because again, because as a kid, I couldn't go down and stick up for my mom, right? I'm always like rooting for the underdog and like, maybe sometimes over advocating for people who maybe shouldn't be. So just use that as an example to look at your own beliefs and behaviors. And this is what we do in the coaching, which is, it changed my life so much when I decided to hire my own coach and get on this journey here. So again, I was an A student, and I didn't like being singled out for being smart either, right? So they would pull you out to go to these gifted classes, and at a time, probably fourth or fifth grade, right, I started like, I don't want to be different for that reason, right? And as my family members were kind of going down that rabbit hole, by the time I was probably 13, I think I had my first, it wasn't one beer, well, maybe one beer. I started drinking at 13 or 14. It was kind of like, well, if you can't beat them, join them, right? So I started at a very young age. I started, being in these relationships where I was very codependent, certainly more playing out with what was going on at home. My one really true love that I felt like was my true love was a drug addict when I was 19 to about 25 years old, right? So again, these are patterns we play out. A lot of times our parental relationships where, I couldn't save my dad. So maybe I can save this guy, right? So maybe I can save this guy. So that took me down a lot of dark alleys, let's say, like sometimes legitimately. And I was in trouble with drinking and driving, and I had lost my license. So at 22, I really I knew I had to get away from this person, that it was just off and on and off and on. So a friend lived in Virginia, so I moved down to Virginia to get, try to get my license back. And she's like, oh, they love New Yorkers down here because we're good workers and all of the things. So I was able to get my license back, but I just got further into my alcohol and drug addiction. Like it was not good. And actually, I'm sorry, I was 24 at that time, I think 23 or 24, because I remember coming home at 25 and I was suicidal. I had been just really on a dark path, and those numbers, right? I'm about to hit one this year of 50. So gosh, that was 25 years ago. And I just it wasn't good. I had ended up in an apartment by myself across from like this crack house. I was like, well, I'm safe because the police are, across the street all the time watching these apartments. And I could barely leave the apartment by the time I packed up most of my stuff, left some of it, and just drove home. And thank God for my mom, who's been my rock, always, just always a home base for me. I was able to get home. They actually put me on antidepressants, and the side effects were so bad that it helped me get my shit together, because I'm like, oh, I'm not taking these. It's making my skin crawl. So I know they serve a purpose, and they just weren't for me. So I was grateful for that. I was able to get my act together for somewhat, right? Get a job. And I got a job at this temporary staffing company. And that's how I really fell in love with human resources, right? The positive, fun part of human resources of, helping people and training people and getting them out to get jobs. Like, I always loved the job search. This is why I love people, helping people identify what their goals are, what they really want to do in life. I'm still on this journey for myself big time after quitting my job in October. So, I am somebody who keeps up leveling, like even during all of that, right? All the drinking, the drugging, the chasing the boys, the problems, drinking and driving, like there was still a part of me. I was still reading all the self-help books. We were, studying Tony Robbins when I was down in Virginia. I still was working on myself, right? I knew this wasn't my life. There was somewhere inside of me of like, there's something better here for me. So it took me a long time. I came back and I met my now ex-husband at that temporary staffing company. He was the water boy. So he was bringing in the 5-gallon water tanks, and he was older than I was. But we really just hit it off, and so grateful. Like, he's an angel on earth for me, because I was reconnecting with that drug addict that I was gonna save, right? So I was just like, forget it. I dated in Virginia. I'm 25. I'm supposed to be headed towards marriage. I didn't even really think I wanted to do that or have kids or whatever, but that's the societal pressure, right? Of like, you're at a certain age, you're supposed to do these things. So I was putting that pressure on myself. And again, met my, I call him my baby daddy sometimes because I think it was funny. And thank God, right? Gave me 2 beautiful children, and we co-parent so beautifully. But that poor man was really like my psychiatrist, although he could not dole out meds. But he was sober. He was sober and in recovery. And again, just showed me that that was possible, right? I don't know how he put up with me, because I was still drinking, and I don't know how he put up with me. But having kids certainly grew me up. Having a career, then I just became part of mommy wine culture, right? Where it's just acceptable to drink, except, is it acceptable to like black out and not remember what the hell happened last night, or freak out because I don't know what I said to someone, or have to call in sick because you're hungover? And that's probably not really the acceptable part of mommy wine culture. But that is part of the issue in this country for sure, or wherever you go, that alcohol is just so celebrated. So anyway, fast forward to another monumental birthday. I'm 40 now, right? And I had stumbled into this yoga class where this woman would just get up and just share about what a mess she was, right? Like, all of the things, her guts were just out on the table of, again, it could be something minor, but she was just sharing about, even like being introverted and not wanting to go to her husband's business party, and how, she leaves after 2 hours. And I'm like, oh, that's permissible, or how she's not involved in the kids' school because it gives her anxiety. She keeps it to a minimum. And I was like, I was the overachiever, like gonna do it all. So I was like, oh, that's allowable. And again, she would just share so much. And I will say, like, I was in judgment at first. I'm like, you're gonna teach the class, right? Like, we go after, we think that teachers should have it all together, right? And this is what I've learned about coaching. And she became my coach and my yoga teacher, and I did my yoga teacher training with her. And that, isn't it people who've walked through the fire that we want to learn from? Like, I think I may have shared this prior, that like my first alcohol counselor when I was 17 didn't drink, never drank. never drank. She just went to school to be a counselor. And like, you want to take some like angry 17-year-old, or maybe, I don't know how old I was, but whatever. But I was not listening to her. She was not going to help me, right? So this is where, if you're considering coaching, right, you want to pick somebody who's walked through the fire, right? So this woman was out there sharing, and we just really connected, and she was starting to coach. So she, had some background with that, and just really helped me work on my worthiness, right? So at the root of all of these things, when we're reaching outside of ourselves, mostly it's not enough, right? My coach right now will say it's, I'm not enough, I don't have enough, or I don't know enough. That those are the enoughnesses, right, that get us on a hamster wheel of fear of some kind. And typically we'll be reaching for alcohol, drugs, sugar, relationships, shopping, Netflix, scrolling, anything but coming in here and saying, okay, let me hold this unworthiness. Let me be with this, right? Which is what a good coach can do, is kind of pull out what are the belief systems, what are the things that are holding you back. And I had a lot of it, and she did a lot of trauma work, which I'm also trained to do. And again, not saying that I'm a psychiatrist by any means, trained to have you look at it. And sometimes, people do need a psychiatrist or a psychologist behind that. But we do some somatic work of like when you can feel things in your body. And we unpacked a lot of my patterns, right? Just like the one that I talked about of over advocating, right? Or just speaking up before I even have all the facts, just because in my house, like, it literally felt like we could die if we didn't go down and like break up what was going on downstairs. And because we were kids, we weren't able to do that, right? So when these things happen to you, they get trapped in your body. And they may not be that significant. They may be even more significant, right? I've coached people with sexual trauma, and again, so much of it is just bringing it to the light, right? Just having someone hold it and be like, I see you, I hear you, and you're beautiful, right? Like, that's what I felt like my friend was doing for me yesterday when she hugged me to get out of the car and say, don't underestimate what you've been through, right? So making sure we have these people in our lives that we can be real and raw with, because it's the hiding and the holding down that can really seriously make us sick. So, whether it's coaching, whether it's therapy, it should be one of those, because, friends are great, but you don't want to rely on them for, your healing, right? So there's all these different situations. So when I got into teacher training, like, I didn't even want to teach yoga. I just wanted to be around these people that were feeling good, right? So when what was happening with the alcohol was I was going to yoga and I was feeling really good, right? An hour of moving your body and staying connected to your breath and being reminded just to keep coming back to your nervous system and getting out of your head. There's, I call it the yoga high. It's, if I do have a couple addictions now, it's, yoga, exercising, maybe I wish I was a little more addicted to the exercising. So yeah, maybe I wouldn't call it an addiction, but maybe yoga, because there is this yoga high, right? And I have to be careful about that too, and spiritual gatherings and breath work, like, not to overdo that either. But what was happening is I would go to yoga, and a lot of times I was hungover, right? So it was getting louder and louder how shitty I felt. So I feel like it was almost like taken from me, right? And I was really using law of attraction, which is something else that I use in my coaching, of like energy attracting like energy, of, making sure we practice how we want to feel to be able to bring it in for ourselves. And, in order to do that, we got to get these other things out of the way. So we get underneath, what are those things that may be blocking your higher vibrations. So for me, it was certainly alcohol. I was using law of attraction to lose weight. And I think I've shared this before, that I'd be sitting meditating and I'm envisioning, my healthy body and feeling good in my body. And I would hear from above, right? You need to lose, or you need to stop drinking. You need to stop drinking. And I'd be like, heck no. Like, it was my identity since I was 14 years old. Like, right? I was the party girl. In fact, I went to a concert last night at this local place and I was telling these stories like, oh my gosh, like I've lost like 9 pairs of shoes over there, and we used to jump the fence to get in, and it was, yeah, it was, I'm like, I felt like I was talking about somebody else. It was really kind of crazy, but so enjoyable to be back there and amongst friends as well. But anyway, so I would hear this, you need to stop drinking. So I played with it off and on. I think I quit for like 6 months, but it was really hard because I'm very earthy. So another thing we look at in coaching is your Ayurvedic makeup, which is the sister science to yoga. So there's earth and fire and air, right? So earth is just loyal and steady and a little heavier. And we all have a mix of all of these things, right? That we come from the elements. And I have a lot of fire, which is that, and jumping on other people, and we can be quick to anger. And we do have a lot of energy with the fire. And whereas air is a little more flighty, usually your artist types and, ADD sometimes can fall into that vata air. So, but with earth, I'm loyal, right? Friends for life, right? Ride or die. Like, these are my people. So I would try to quit drinking, but still show up at the same dinners where everyone's overdoing. And with time, it just started to feel like, oh, okay, these aren't my people anymore, right? Just at least for that time being. And I got into the yoga training, and it was crazy. Like, the stuff that happened, we were in this temple at a local college. I think there was 17 of us, and we were certainly brought together for a reason. And this, the teacher was way more spiritual than maybe focused on teaching us how to teach yoga. Like, we did a ton of meditations, had these huge clearings. And what really happened was that there was a woman there who was so vibrant and radiant and beautiful and had been sober since she was 25. And she was fun and funny and sexy. And I was able to project on her, right? Be like, oh my gosh, like, this is possible. You can build a life without alcohol where you're vibrant, radiant, sexy, and fun. Like, wow, okay, I got this. And then all this spiritual stuff, whatever happened we were there for 9 days in a row. I mean, if anyone's been through yoga teacher training, I think you know that, like, yeah, your guts come out. It's scary. It's a lot. I don't know. But it was very, very powerful. I have some lifelong friends from that training. So that's another thing. If you're into yoga, even if you don't want to be a teacher, to do a training is like so good as far as getting to know yourself and this overhaul. And that's really when I stopped drinking, was 6 years ago in March was the training. And yeah, it was really, kind of taken from me. So I feel so lucky. Sometimes I feel a little guilty that I don't white knuckle. Like, sometimes I want to have a Corona and lime on a summer day, but my body is just like, no, like, it's just no. And I love Brooke Castillo. She says, I've drank enough for a lifetime. Right? I've drank enough for a few lifetimes. I was always I stay up, I'm the last one up. I'll drink the boys under the table. Like, I was so cool. So yeah, I'm done. Like, I'm just done. And that can be okay. Right? So, again, there may just be some things that you want to play with, giving up. And, maybe it's not drinking or drugging. Maybe it is your patterns with food or just perfectionism, right? Sometimes it's like we're addicted to working and overdoing and feeling like I have to be perfect. That was a big one for me, to give up having to be perfect, right? I'll never forget when this coach looked at me, because I was just I had so much going on. I was so overwhelmed, whatever. And she looked at me and I wanted things to be different. I wanted to be how I thought I was supposed to look and have it all together and blah, blah, blah. Who the hell has it all together? We don't know. And this is where it was like, oh, safe space to talk about that. No one's pretending to have it all together here. Whereas at work, a lot of people are, and, they're just on a power play and people aren't actually connecting. And so being around these people who are being real and we're like, here's my mess, what's your mess? And like, oh, thank you, we're connected because we are, working on our messes. And that's what she said to me that one day. She just said, honey, what if you're just always going to be a little bit of a mess, right? What if you just back off the pressure of yourself, of this perfection? And like, that was a game changer. Like whenever I'm feeling like, I just think of that. Hey, you're just always gonna be a little bit of a mess. You're always gonna have to run in 3 times when you leave the house to get the stuff that you forgot, to get, the credit card that you left on the counter. So all that to say, there's always things that we can be quitting to get out of the way to get to our authentic and truest selves, right? So it's an everyday thing, right? The worthiness is an everyday thing of just waking up feeling like crud, but having the tools to sit and meditate or come out for this walk/run, to know I can do 10 minutes of yoga and start to feel better, right? Or sometimes that I need to sit in it and not feel good for the whole day, and that's okay too, right? So permission to feel feelings is huge. So I hope me sharing has served in some way. And again, whatever you can do to get outside, get in nature. I'm heading to the ocean with my 80-year-old mother tomorrow, so I'm so thrilled for some more, really just being with the earth and reminding myself, that I'm really, really just connected and a little bit insignificant, right? That was another part of this yoga class, is that we are so massive, like the whole world exists within us, and yet we are this tiny little speck. We are this tiny little speck. So to come back to this wonder, if you do want to connect with me, you can email me at S as in Sarah, Madkour, MADKOUR 29 @gmail.com. And we could do a free consult session to see if we might work together. All right, be well.